Good afternoon. Thank you for everyone for coming today to our grant and budget committee, as well as everyone watching online. I'm going to call the meeting to order at 6:01 p.m. So the next item of business is just to do committee introductions. Our first meeting was really in the budgets. I think it would be nice to say maybe a name, like our vision for the budget, as well as our preferred communication style. I know that we all have different ways. I think this would help us work as a cohesive unit. Um, would anybody like to start?
Okay, I guess you're looking at me. So.
Yes.
Was your name?
Mhm.
Well, my name is John Adams. And what do you want?
I said name, vision. Like, what do you want to see for the grant committee?
What I would like to see from my vision is that because I work with youth, and so like just this week I've been to two like a couple forums like with the youth expressing sort of what they feel like are the biggest challenges in the community, and it's been a good opportunity to kind of ask them what they think what are the root causes of why kids are attracted to guns, or why there's so much gun violence, or just why some of the things they see in the community are. And so from that experience, I would really love it if we could come up with some creative, innovative grants that are based on sort of the feedback from the community. So I know that there's probably examples and models for how grants like, what, we can, there are probably examples already out there, but I would really love it if we could somehow continue to get feedback from the community and based on what they see as the problems, and then really come up with grants that really try to address what they see as the issues in their communities.
Thank you for sharing. Would anybody else like to share?
So I think from my perspective, I agree with John around youth, but I think also making sure that the grants are going to organizations from a variety of populations that address youth, that address homelessness, that address differently abled people. Because I don't really like to use that language of just disabled, but people who have different abilities. And making sure that grants are also the organizations we're given to are not just the same organizations that are always getting grants, and making sure that there is actually evidence-based outcomes that we can actually hold people accountable to. I really want us to have some type of measure in place that we are assessing how these grants are not just being administered, but how effective they are. Are people meeting their program outcomes, different things of that nature, and then follow the money trail of organizations. So I don't want someone, if you only have a $5,000 budget, don't apply for a $50,000 grant if you don't have the capacity to be able to deal with that. So really assessing the feasibility of the organizations when they are applying for these grants and matching it to the projects and making sure it's clear, we know what they're doing, so that we can provide the necessary oversight and necessary support.
Thank you.
And I'm allowed to hear Ferguson.
Would anybody else like to share?
I'll go. Good evening, everyone. My name is Kate Kennedy. My preferred communication style is please call me on the phone. Some of the commissioners have already done that. So I encourage you, if you want to talk about something, definitely call me. But I'm also available on text and email. But from a young age, calling, conditioned to call on the phone. So my vision for the budget committee. So I was with a convening of leaders in the criminal legal space, like doing the advocacy work really on the ground. And it really reinforced that we have a lot of leaders in our community who are already doing the work, who really need to be uplifted. And so I'm thinking about them when I'm thinking about our work. And I'm excited to connect with them more because I know that they are interested in the work of the commission.
Thank you. Would Pete or Commissioner Wong like to respond?
Hi, I'm Terry Wong, and I guess my communication style is not really a method, but that we are open with our feelings and our values, and we include them, not just we don't talk just about facts and mechanistic things. So I hope that we remain authentic and vulnerable to each other. Um, what I envision with the grant making is that I hope to, like has already been voiced, there's so much creativity and depth of real lived experience in the community. So I hope to center that. I hope to center that. I think that there are many nonprofits who do great work, but it's the people that have to deal with these issues on a day-to-day basis that have that knowledge. Because we talk a lot about grassroots stuff, but are we really going to those people? And I will also be hopefully finding people that are willing to work deeply on not just the things that bubble to the top, but the systemic causes of a lot of these things. So we have to have. I'm looking for budgets, or I'm looking for grants that have a sense of sustainability and hope, because I really do believe this of how the arts can be used to communicate and bring people together. So, thank you.
Hi, everybody. I'm Pete Van Leer. And I guess my vision, aside from having a sustainable budget and using our money as a commission wisely, the grants piece, I always go back and look at the charter in section 115 because I think the community-based piece is really important to me. Like, and that's a lot of people say, like, really listening to the community and responding to the needs of the community around. And here it says it's community-based violence prevention, restorative justice, and mediation programs to reduce the need for police activity. So that's a pretty good vision for me. So let's go.
I concur. Thank you. So my name is Adriana Rodriguez. I have similar visions as everyone else. It is my hope that we think about our ideas and our visions, and we implement them in a creative way and continually challenge ourselves and challenge each other to ensure that our grants meet the needs of the community. Uh, the next item of business is a roll call. Commissioner Adams,
Present.
Commissioner Terry Wang,
Present.
Commissioner Pete Van Leer,
Present.
Commissioner Alana Garrett Ferguson,
Present.
Commissioner Kate Koenig, present. Commissioner Adriana Rodriguez, present. Thank you for that. So we have the established forum for the number of commissioners to present business. The next item of business that I received is just a general draft 2.10 of the grant making and management. I wanted to provide this information so that we can have just an idea of what is kind of in place, or I don't want to say in place, but that is serving as a guideline, right? So it has general verbiage about the commission. That might be that might be good that he comes right at this time. Oh yeah, that is true. So it provides general understanding about the mandate, and of course that we have the ability to grant based on what he said, violence prevention, restorative justice, and mediation to reduce the need for police activity. The next item, it outlines an annual grant timeline and process, and it states the Budget and Grant Committee to establish grant priorities and goals via majority vote by March 31st of each year. So it states what the committee guidelines, goals, the number of programs each year, number and amount of grants, eligibility, funding process, measurable outcomes. The staff develop eligibility criteria, applications, and scoring sheet for review and approval of budget and grant committee. by April 30th. So this is just a general outline. I will say after attending the budget and hearing committee from the city, there was questions about do we have to submit RFPs, and there is charter within the 50,000 budget of the city that we need to do further investigation. So this is just a general outline. It is not set in stone. There is some tentative follow-up that needs to occur. I guess the idea from this meeting is to start that process to really outline. So there is committee, I guess, ideas and agendas that we have to set forth, and there are staff. I think it's up to us because this is not set in stone. Are we okay with this model? Do we want to be more hands-on? Do we want to propose any ideas, or especially once we get those further clarifications from the law department of how we go about grant making? That's why I wanted to open up with our vision, right? Because our vision and our ideas will really set the blueprint from what we set forth from now until whatever we put in the bylaws, as well as I think sometimes we think, like, yeah, I can do this or I can achieve this. We have to think five commissioners, like lines, I don't know what to call it, class, um, ensure that we have processes that are suitable for us, as well as, I don't know, about staff or, whoever is involved in the grant making processes, that we have checks and balances, that we are fair to anybody that applies. So that's going to take some thinking and some collective mind. So I'll give the floor to any questions at this time.
The chair, I am the chair of the committee, and I don't know if they have input on this too. Is it like a joint effort? Because this is part of the operations manual, so we haven't gotten.
Yeah, so I'm familiar that you haven't got to this,
Yeah.
but the board committee would not say, oh yeah, the grant and budget committee can have 5 grants. Does that make sense? Or they can have 5 grants in this amount. That's where we will come into play.
But a lot of this structure is probably still under at least potential like overlap, right?
So I will.
I'm just saying that we haven't gotten the chance. What we can do is that we can discuss it, and I can bring it back to the rules committee if that is.
I guess my follow-up question would be, what I just want to understand, what role do you see the rules committee playing in budgets? Because I'm not understanding sort of, this is the budget and grants committee, and this is the grant making and management portion of the charter. I need help understanding where rules comes in. Because I feel like it's clear to me that domain is those like responsibilities and duties should belong in this committee. So I'm not saying that no, I just need help understanding sort of like why you're saying what you're saying.
I'm just, I don't, without Jason being here, I don't know, and it may just be that. But there might be some rules that actually have to be set. You guys can set the goals and vision, and obviously whatever we set with the rules committee is we have to all vote for on a full commission. I'm just noticing this is a part of the bylaws and operations. So I just suggest that we just continue with this conversation. And I don't know if there's going to be any overlap, but I'm just saying that we have not gone to this portion yet in our discussion.
So Commissioner Wong, I will clarify that this is part of the budget and procedure manual, so that is correct. But I believe, similar to what Commissioner Adams stated, that we will work of course with staff, right? So my presenting this is not to be considered challenging or defiant. So I want to clarify that it is to start our vision and working with staff to ensure that we are working in a collaborative partnership to ensure that whatever we implement, that we as a committee are okay with it and then pass it forward to the rules committee to, review to see that we're not in violation. But like I stated before, there are from attending the budget meeting from the city, there may be some other things that we need to review, even with this, to see to clarify that process. So my intent is not to take a vote today. I'm not saying yes, this is what we're going to do. This is how it should be implemented. I think that there are a variety of steps that may come about. It's just to present this information that I was presenting that I feel that the whole committee should be aware of.
I mean, I could see how maybe the rules committee could potentially set some parameters, like maybe like timelines or something to the point that there's a rule that we don't take too much time, to make sure that we know. But beyond something like that, I'm having a really hard time um, thinking. It just feels like there would be too many chefs in the kitchen, and we're trying to figure this portion out. I don't know. I just feel I'm having. I just think there would be a lot of people putting input into it, and then does that mean at some point the rules committee and the budget committee have to meet? So I feel like if both entities were going to be addressing this, at some point we would probably have both committees would have to meet to deal with this section of charter.
So I'm gonna go Commissioner Ferguson, then Commissioner Kennedy, and then I will take.
I think it's important to go back to Charter 115. I think as even Pete kind of led to when you asked your visioning question, it gives you the guidelines, it gives you a timeline, it gives you some type of rules already. Also, looking at that operational manual was instituted prior to 115. So while it's which is one of the reasons why it's currently being updated. This is an addition, and so of course it's put in there as far as a chapter, but it is not a part of it in the way of the rules committee would determine what's going on with the grant making and management committee. Exactly, they put this portion because this already is mandated by the it's mandated by the full commission, and it is already listed up under it's already listed up under budget. So I think to put it in back up under rules, I think that that's gonna provide confusion because again, is this not the page? This right here, where is this timeline? Where does this exist?
This is from 115.
What about
This
the rest?
is a recommendation from Jason.
Well,
The timeline is a recommendation.
yeah. So clarification that I received this information, and I just wanted us to review it. So it's not to determine whether the rules committee is going to uh, come and meet with us. It's not to um, state that we're going to make any changes right now to the document. I think it's important that we have an idea of what's in the manual and just start. And I think it's important even for um, the in terms of executive director to be here too. So I would never say, let's start thinking of ideas and let's put motions forward and let's vote. I think it's very important that we are aware that we start doing our diligence of if there's anything that we want to change, if we want to be more involved with the application process or criteria, or we want to form a work group. Those are the types of things that I was thinking along the lines of, but I don't expect those decisions to be made today. Okay.
I just want to, thank you. I just want to follow up on the rules conversation. My understanding is that the decisions that are made within the committees then just go directly from the committees to the larger commission to vote. It doesn't go from this committee to the rules committee.
Except when the committee the rules committee really should have been met first, and we should have decided on the rules as a whole commission, and then you guys could have proceeded. I'm just saying, I don't anticipate anything that's countervailing at this point, but I'm just saying that my only note was that we have not looked at this portion yet. It does say that the committee, what it's saying, that this is the portion we need to work on, the budget grant committee will establish A through F, right? So first paragraph is charter language that's not changeable, right? And this is the portion that is for the budget grants committee. And then I guess there could be some discussion about the dates. That's about it. It may not be controversial, but what I was just merely noting is that we have not met on this portion. So, but I'm happy that, if they're not even controversial, we'll just take your suggestions and then we will codify it. If there's anything that needs to be done, I think we do have to go back to the rules committee to discuss it, because this is part of the operation manual.
So,
unless it's broadly in these things, right?
Commissioner Pete.
Yeah, I don't hear a lot of big conflict here. I think it's just we're just talking around a little bit in circles. So I feel like if this group, I think it would be helpful to have the executive director here to just like, if we have questions about the origins of like the timeline, for example, because I think that is, I would hope, something we could discuss tonight and sort of make a recommendation, whether we have to vote or not. Maybe we would have to vote on the timeline and say we recommend it to the rules committee to include these dates or something like that. That these dates are good. It would be great to be able to do that now if we can, because I think our big work is to figure out A through F there. This seems just like, again, if we could just if we can get some questions answered, if we have them. I mean, this seems like if the staff has worked on this and come up with this timeline, it seems like the staff capacity, they see that this is a good timeline for them to do the work. And it says by April 30, there would the eligible, all these criteria would be established by April 30 by this committee, by this says budget grant committee chair, approval of the committee, I would assume. And then it has applications open by May 15th. So I'm assuming this coming from the staff that's enough time for them to put this in operation to get the applications open in 15 days, right? So, I mean, that's why it would be nice to have some clarification, but I don't see an issue with our group making a recommendation to the rules committee, and the rules committee, I would assume, would just take our recommendation and plug it in to this overall package.
Commissioner Zaid.
I just wanted to confirm some of your thinking. I spoke to staff, and due to capacity, because I offered suggestions to maybe twice a year, disperse twice a year, and things like that. And they said that this would work better with their staff and things like that.
So does anybody else have a comment?
I just want to say, I think it's nice to have a plan, but I would just say, let's just keep it all open, especially the timeline. For me, the timeline looks a little tight. So as a teacher, how we plan is like you get to the outcome, and sometimes the best way to plan these things is to move backwards. So we know what we want to get in the end and when we want it, and then you sort of move backwards from there. So all I would just ask is that I think I wouldn't want to, just say, oh, this timeline looks good. I think at a certain point in our next meeting, we can all come with sort of our suggestions maybe for this, because I don't know, this March 31st, I don't know, the timeline looks a little tight.
Mm-hmm. So, and I think these numbers will be reflective to see if we have to do, unfortunately, RFPs, right? So that's why I'm saying it's not set in stone. There's a lot of things that we have to work out. Because I would say that I also wanted 2 grant cycles, because I feel like if you apply for one, then you just miss out. But I was brought to the was mentioned about staff capacity. So I understand that we're on the short timeline as well, possibly if we have to do additional processes that may not be coming for here. We hope that maybe in the future that we will consider it, and we always stay open to new ideas and innovation, and we can continually evaluate our practices to see what we find is effective and what needs improvement. Commissioner
If I can make a suggestion, because the A through F guidelines, goals of the program, number amount of grants, eligibility, funding process, number of factors, there's a longer conversation, and that's for you guys to do, or for us to do. But it seems like if we want to make changes to this other part, we should maybe decide the timeline, then I can take it back to the budget, to the rules committee, because we are trying to pass, we are meeting quite in order to pass, get some, codified rules down. And so we appreciate your cooperation in this, because otherwise we have to redo the package, redo everything.
So that's why I want to bring this forward. And there was discussion in the city budget hearing about, this is city money. Is there any stipulations that would have to be placed? It is our hope that it's not, but we have to do our due diligence to ensure that we're crossing our T's and dotting our I's. So I believe that it would be a best practice to get that information and see if that still aligns with this, if there's any modifications. But of course, that would be with, of course, the assistance of the executive director.
So how long do you think that will take?
We just had the meeting. They didn't provide like, oh, I'm gonna give this to you tomorrow by the end of the week. I believe it because they're trying to approve budgets. It is my hope that the information is expedited, but I can't give you a definite answer.
We can always pass more rules or amendments, I guess. But I'm just saying, if we want to have a discussion about the timeline, we probably should have that first, because it seems like everything else you guys can do by yourself, and you just have A through F. That's it. So there's no changes possible really in that. You guys can have an open discussion. Does anybody have any thoughts about that?
I'm not understanding.
So A through F is just saying this committee will establish these things. That's it. So those seem like longer up, but this other part, I think it's part of the rules, right? Like that we have to enforce them. If the person doesn't meet the deadline, don't let them apply, unfortunately, in that cycle. So maybe this part with the timeline needs to be decided first. So at least the rules committee can go first. I don't know
how long the RFP. So let's just say if we have an RFP. Let's just saying that if we have to go to RFP for.
Jason?
I'll just speak up by now.
Hello?
Oh, no. I think you have the wrong number, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
I think so.
It's okay. Have a good day.
First time that's happened.
Wow.
So I don't think that any items should be moved or any changes should occur at this time because we don't have enough information. I think it's just important that we bring this forward, that we have an understanding, and then just have some time to think and reflect if there's any ideas that we might want to implement, or once we receive that information, then we will be able to adjust this. Aid?
I just want to say I do agree with you, John, about the timeline being kind of tight, because I'm also concerned about the community's knowledge of it. Will we have enough time to get this information out there to enough people so as many organizations can know about it as possible and apply and have the opportunity to take advantage of the funds? Yeah, that's pretty tight.
I'm sorry.
Calling me Commissioner B.
Through the chair, Commissioner Wong, I just wanted, so you said something about the timeline of the work you're doing on rules. So do you have a sense of when, do we have a couple of weeks? What, or a month? Like what's the timeline that we should be thinking about for rules?
So we are meeting on Monday. We're hoping to get through, I think, this type of portion. There's two portions in section 2. One is this type of the everyday of the commission, but then there's separate portions, the evidentiary hearings. I haven't received them from Jason, the drafts yet, but we expedited and accelerated our timeline in order to get through the rules as efficiently as possible so we can vote on it by the next
Wednesday.
Yeah.
So ideally, if we could do this tonight, it would be great, but it's not like we have.
It's not. I think it's a change, but it seems like there is room for just, and then again, if we have to be mindful that if we're keeping this timeline, April 30th is when we need to start
Right.
getting people out. So we probably need to.
So Jason will be here in 10 minutes. It seems like that would help. Not that we have to decide tonight, but that would at least help us figure out, can we decide tonight or not? And, no, I just said, yeah, we don't have to, but we can decide whether we want to. Yeah.
Commissioner Kennedy?
So I totally agree, Trina. In fact, it might be a good idea to do a few events in a few different places around town to let people know that these opportunities are coming, maybe answer some questions that they have, talk about kind of what our basic parameters are, and try to do it in person. I think that would be helpful in trying to like promote basically what these grant opportunities.
And I am curious to know if staff offers some type of support with community members that may need assistance. So how can we make that into like also like a clinic of some sort if needed?
Yeah.
So is my hope. I know that we're trying to hire a grant coordinator, so that might be, a recommendation. Because I know like other organizations like Neighborhood Connections, they have grant seekers as well as St. Luke's. Commissioner Fripp.
Yes. So just a couple of things. One, I think it's important for us tonight to at least establish guidelines around what type of organizations that we are going to be funding, how are we going to deal with conflict of interest, and then secondly, I would like to go on the record and say, I hope that we are not going to not meet the needs of the community because of staff concerns, because I think that is not which we have learned before from prior meetings that we have had, it is not in our purview in any way, shape, or form that we have anything to do with all the things that have to do with staff. Our person that we have to talk to is Jason, and so the executive director. So I'm hoping that we are not going to not meet the needs of the community just because certain people have had certain conversations with staff, and that we'll actually deny the community of what they need because these grants are for community. And I don't think this $1 million will be spent with just one grant cycle. So I think it would not be in the best interest of the community for us to only have one grant cycle, and then for us to overstep our reach by saying it is due to staff concerns. I think that is a great disservice that we are doing to the community, and I would love for that to be on the record and in the minutes if that is the type of decision that we are going to be making.
I agree, Alana. Also, to your point, I think that perhaps we can establish some like office hours, quote unquote, where we can help members of the community who can just like stop in. They don't have to make an appointment. They can just like show up, a couple hours here, a couple hours there to get support with their grants.
Commissioner Zaid.
Yeah, and I would just say I hear your point. You're absolutely right. But at the same time, we can't, if there's no capacity, we can't overwork the staff, and then it also can be negative to the community if the staff is overworked or maybe they missed something, or maybe someone isn't getting served the best way because of their limited capacity. So maybe next year cycle we could consider opening it up to 2 cycles when there's more staff and there is a grants person there to kind of take that over and do more of the work. That's just kind of how I was looking at it. So I'm not saying that, but we can only do what we can do.
Commissioner Adams.
Hi, I've wanted to with Alana and Kate. I think that in the end, we really have to keep the community at the center. And I don't think we should compromise what is best for the community for ourselves or the staff. I just think the community has to come first. And then, if there are staffing issues, they're overwhelmed and they can't do it. I mean, we do have money and contractual services. We could consider if we allocate some funds from that to give them some extra support. Maybe we hire someone part-time or contractually to help, because once that phase is over, that phase will be over, right? And so I think that's something that we can consider. we talked about this, but I really don't support one cycle. What we talked about was the fact that, if we had two cycles, maybe like one in the fall or one in the spring or summer and winter, whatever we decide, it would give, maybe groups who maybe missed that deadline to prepare for the next deadline. I just would not, and that also allows us an opportunity to address um, a need that may arise um, in between, right? So if something happens, we would still have the ability to support the community through the grants if we had two cycles. So I do support two cycles. I think that there are ways for us to not overwhelm the staff and to support them while we're also putting the community first. So I just wanted to put that out.
So I wanted to touch base with executive director since he did, if he feels comfortable, if he want to get more engaged of the conversation. I think his input is imperative.
Sure. What questions do we have?
So I think there is a few questions. One was about the tentative timeline. A few commissioners have brought up that they feel that it might be a little tight and it may be hard to review the grants within this timeline set forth, as well as another question was proposed about the rules committee and um, establishing that manual by the next meeting, especially since we have this outline in today's budget meeting. There may be some logistics that we may need to review. And then the last point was about grant cycles, one grant cycle, two, and making sure that we're doing our due diligence. That I guess that all grantees have the ability to have access throughout the year, I would say.
As well, because just in two big clarifiers. Everything outside, I guess, below the division of this part, who created that one, and then right here it says staff develop eligibility criteria application scoring sheet for review approval of budget and grant. So, but the actual applications are reviewed and deliberated and scored by this committee. So I guess my second question is, how much work is going to be for the staff when it comes to this grant making process based on what was written here, but who also created this part?
Okay. So first, start with who created this. So this is just a draft, right? So I think everyone needs to just take a recognition that we're trying to present you with just some guidelines. So you don't have to start from scratch, right? So this mirrors typical one-year programs, right? You have to have a period each year that you follow. It's on the government's fiscal cycle. So it was created in this office, right? I looked at a bunch of different government grant programs that are government-based because we are a government grant-based program, right? So foundations can do whatever they want. They could dole out money 5 times a year. You can pick up a phone and call them, and they can just say, okay, within limits of what their board says, we say, yeah, we could make a special exception for you. Government's a little different. We have to be very transparent of how we do this, very fair, right? And consider the resource intensiveness of it because it's government. Everything's going to take longer. So the timeline is rough, right? So this could be changed. If you guys feel like, okay, let's tweak it a little bit, fine. If you want to do 2 programs a year, I'm not opposed to it. I would push back on this first year because we're getting started. It would be really hard to even get one out successfully. We got one shot to hit it good, right? And then next year we can say, well, do we want to do it twice? But this year we're already late in the game. So, we can reevaluate next year if we want to do multiple things, having gone through the experience just once, because we haven't done this yet. And there could be a lot of hiccups that we lose credibility with the community with that aren't our fault, right? We're going to be dependent on, the question came up today, at council hearing about do we have to go before council to get approval for some of these once we decide who they go to? So that's going to go to the law department. They're going to debate that, right? But every step in that process could add time to it. Further, the fiscal cycle. So let's say we did one in the spring and one in the fall. We're on the grant money has to be all distributed by the end of one fiscal year. We can't carry money over, right? So if we did one late in the year, I can't guarantee in the city how it shuts down around October. It starts getting hard to do fiscal things, and I could get all that money out in time by the end of the year. So until we practice this one time, I really don't know what to expect from the city partners that need to be part of this. So I think we should just take it easy the first year and try and get it right, and then build upon our experiences this year with how can we do it better next year, right? Including adding more opportunities or whatever it may be. So the other thing is the police reform work is going to come at you hard and fast. You guys are all going to be deep in these police reform committees, and so meeting a couple of times a year to do grant reviews might be cumbersome and take away from that other core work too. If you have to meet several times to grade and review, because that's the one thing staff can help you as much as you want, right? Or the least amount you want. In this vision, I try to say, we'll develop everything. You just give us the vision and we'll develop it, and you just approve it, because that takes the burden off you and it frees you up to do the police reform stuff and not have to do the nuts and bolts turnkey, right? So that's kind of what this is, but it's all, you're the artist, you paint this, and you just tell staff what needs to be done. But until we go through it one time, I can't tell you what all the pitfalls are, and I don't want you guys to set yourselves up for failure in the community, because they'll be really hard on you if we don't get this right the first time.
Thank you. I think those are all valid points, and I believe we're having interesting dialogue. Is there anybody else that like to speak at this time?
Fiscal year for the city is October to October.
It's the fiscal year is a calendar year, so we so we get released the money, 25% of our budget every year automatically based on what the budget was the year before, and then we go through the approval process that we just went through. So today I go advocate for the release of the rest of that. That becomes fixed, and they release the full amount, and then you have to have all your purchases and things done by about November. If you don't have everything covered by November, it's almost impossible to do business with the city at that point. So it's a hard timeline sometimes.
Commissioner Kate?
Jason, do you know if we need to go through an RFP process?
So RFP is if we were to hire an outside professional service for this. We have to. What we do have to do is go through a contract process, so that will require law, right? So we don't have any contracts yet, so we have to work with the law department to design our grant contracts, what the obligations are to the people we give the money to, right? All of that stuff. Contracts can take time at this city, so that's the other element this year. I don't know how long that will delay this overall process is getting into these contracts. So I'm going to start working with the city now. It's on council's radar, and we'll get more specifics based on what parameters you give us, you know.
Are there any more questions? I know that it was a question that was brought forth. Are you aware of like the contract process, and would that have an impact on the timeline?
So yes, so let's say we vote to approve the grants, applications open, applications close. You guys grade them, right? So now we have two questions here we don't know after you decide who you want to award, right? How long it will take us to create contracts, because we've never done it before with the law department, depending on how many grantees there are. And then also, council asked a legal question today of whether or not they have to approve the grants that you approve. So now we are going to wait for a legal decision. If that's the case, they would have to have a process through that. Means we might have to go through a committee at council. It will have to be read out of committee and then go to full council for a vote, most likely, and that could take a lot of time. So that's the other unknown we don't have on this timeline right now, is what the law department's going to say about that, because it's never been done before.
Commissioner Ferguson?
So I was gonna bring this up later, but I'm bringing them now because I'm kind of a little confused. Or I'm not gonna say I'm confused. I just want a little bit more clarity with how this office has worked fiscally when it comes to city funds. So it's brought to my attention that this office, because they're a government agency, if they have done programming, they have to find a fiscal agent in the community that is outside of the city because they don't want to go through the red tape of utilizing the city in order to get the dollars. And so there was a previous year we used Burville Card, this year we're using Black Lives Matter for a major project. When it comes to this, however, because this is our grant, how would that then work when it comes to the red tape of the city and a fiscal agent? Because I'm kind of confused how we have a fiscal agent for the office stuff, but we don't utilize the city for what we do our own programming, but then we do want to use the city when it comes to this. So I just want some clarity around that.
So, okay. So you're partially right on what you're saying, right? So we're talking about when someone gives us a grant, right, where we have an option of receiving external money, right? So I'll give you an example. When we used Bell Burton Car, the framers of issue 24, we took some of them down to the NACO conference, right? And we got some money for that. And I think the city actually was the fiscal agent. So what we mean is who's handling the money. That's what the fiscal agent is. When it comes to this grant stuff, we don't need a fiscal agent. We're giving them the money, so they're the receivers of that money. So they're the fiscal agent of the money. They're the ones who are going to manage how it's distributed after we give them that check. They're going to oversight it, right? So we're talking about what she's talking about is when people give us money, right? There have been times where people have offered us money, and I have advised that another fiscal agent be the recipient of that grant because they don't have the same restrictions as the city does and they can move faster. So that is why I have chosen to advise Shelley on a project recently because she was dealing with a large amount of money. And when you deal with that, then we have all the contractual obligations. We'd have to go through council. If someone else wanted to receive that money and we could be partners on that project, we can do that, right? So we weren't the applicants for the grant per se, and we weren't the fiscal agent. We weren't the people that handle the money. Anytime you handle the money, there's a lot more stuff you have to do. But in this instance, we're talking about delivering money, not handling the money. So it's two different issues we're talking about here. So there is red tape when we receive grant money that we have to follow too, right? So that's why if we have another option, if someone wants to give a grant for a program and there's someone else who would take that money, but we get to be a partner in it, it's easier for us to do it that way.
So then does that ever pose a conflict of interest? Because I'm thinking moving forward, if we're giving money to community organizations and whoever can apply, and we have criteria, anybody can apply, but then there are going to be other times that we accept money and we're not going to utilize the city resources. We're going to use a fiscal agent. How do we operate in a way that it doesn't seem like we're like impropriety?
And that's a good question. So now that we have money to give, we're in a different field. So every time we go through this grant process, we really have to look closely at who we do business with, who we're financially tied to, and what their relationship with us is to the CPC. So we've worked with a lot of organizations. I mean, I have one annual report where it's 3 pages of organizations that have partnered with us on projects, right? So we do need to define very clearly, now that we give grants, which we never had that issue before until this year, right? So how do we manage that, right? Because we do have to also work with those agencies on the police reform issues aside from what we're working with them on the grant stuff. So it is something, and I think council even asked that question, like, how's this going to work? Because it could get really messy, and they're not wrong. So I guess the short answer is let's work really close with law and make sure that when we start this, that we have a process that's really fair and conflict-free.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Commissioner Pete?
Yeah. So, Jason, I mean, in terms of this timeline, you talk about why you have this timeline and the reasons for it, especially like it sounds like you kind of work backwards. Like you need to have it has to be done by contract period and time afterwards, refers to the reasons you've stated. So moving back, so it seems like from a staff perspective, like this seems like a doable timeline. Given that there will be hiccups, things you don't know about, but this is based on your your staff capacity and what you think is really reasonably can be done in the first year with this new commission, this new power to give grants.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're a little behind it now already, so this was designed to maybe be a standing rule that we follow every year or try to keep the timelines. But it should be, I don't think you have to make it a hard and fast. You can say these are the general recommended timelines each year because you do want to hold yourselves accountable to something, right? Not that you can't flex that. You can just make a motion and say we're going to move the timeline back because there's more pressing work. But the reason is it's good to have a guideline, some type of goal to work towards having this done, or else it'll get messy and all over the place every year. People can't count on that. That's the other thing. If you have grants that are consistent and it gets to be known and we're lasting in the charter forever, the word will get out. This is the timeline every year, and eventually most of the orgs will know because we'll be advertising and advertising and advertising.
Commissioner
I would just like to say, like I said, I've been at a lot of events recently. There's so many needs in the community right now that I don't think I would be okay with, let's play it safe. There's like real stuff happening right now. There's like today, just at the event today, there are lots of organizations that we're not aware of who do want funds, who have programs that they want to enact. And I would think that we should err on the side of giving as many organizations an opportunity to get a grant as possible. In the end, the community should come first. And we do want to serve them as best as we can. But as several people said when we talked about our vision for the committee, like he said, there's a lot of people out here doing a lot of good work already. So I think that we might be underestimating the community by saying that we should pull back. I don't think we should pull back because the needs are down. So that's just my opinion. That's just my opinion.
Commissioner Wong, then we'll take Pete, and then ED, Executive Director Goodwin.
What I'm hearing is everyone's in agreement in dispersing the funds as deeply and widely in the community as possible. However, what I'm hearing is that there is a hard deadline of November. So even if we do that, we're already into almost March. I don't know, to get the outreach to those organizations and provide clinics and backup for those things. This is just like the first year. What I would recommend is what Jason said. Can we have language from soon? We have to pass this in operation. Let's say these are general guidelines, subject to change. It's the ways that we want to change. That we can look. There is a momentum towards more cycles and opportunities. Would that be good if we add some language in that regard? Because I just don't think it's like possible if everything has been done by November to even get this out. Because you're saying these are organizations that we're not connected to, so it takes time, it takes effort. And who is going to make that effort? It has to be us or the outreach community at this point that goes into the community, provides even guidance on how to maybe write these grants and fill out these grants. I'd be willing to volunteer for that. I don't want to tax the staff more than that, but all of these events take time and planning. So I don't, and we are, already 3 months into this. So, but just because I do want us to eventually get where John is going, can we have language that, makes us accountable? So we don't, because you get what he's saying. Like, we put this in, we're just going to do it, and we're just going to get used to it, and we're going to get overwhelmed with police reform more. Would it be better to have a 2-year plan, maybe, set here?
I mean, I would say that's something that we should maybe discuss.
Sorry.
Oh, Commissioner
Chair,
Pete.
yeah, so on that, I think I agree with what you're both saying. I do see there's a lot of need. We need to address it as quickly as possible. I don't feel that rushing through a process without everything that Terry, you were saying about, getting out in the community, and we've all been talking about how do we reach those groups, how do we help support them to apply to understand what to do. So I feel like this is a really fairly solid plan that we've got a recommendation from staff. Like it seems like a good plan, but I would hate to lock us into like either this set of dates or another set of dates for the second year. But I think that I feel like we will look at this toward the end of the year as we're setting, the next year based on the experience we have and the needs we see out there and the capacity of the groups and our own capacity. We've been doing this for a better part of the year. I feel like moving this forward now would probably make sense. But with that adding sort of like intention to reconsider, revise as we learn, kind of thing.
Commissioner Saeed, and then Commissioner Kate, and then sounds like Commissioner Ferguson. Okay.
Okay, so John, what I wanted to say is I know what you mean because I work on the ground every day with a lot of grassroots organizations. My main role where I work is outreach. So what do you think about in our regular commission meetings that we invite a lot of those grassroots organizations to those meetings so that we can get their input on things like that as we're going through this process of what would be beneficial. From what I see, like it might be, I mean, we do want to reach as many people, but if they're giving small grants and they can't do a lot of the work, for me, I it might be more beneficial for us to right now, since capacity is low, give like larger grants to organizations that seem to be most effective and have the highest outcomes so they can have even higher outcomes. So I don't know, that's just a thought from just the people that I work with. And I do know of organization that is connected to about 100 grassroots organizations in Cleveland that all need funding, that I can reach out to that director and have her invite her contacts to our next community meeting so they can give you that input.
Commissioner Kate.
So I just want to kind of reiterate what Jason was saying about meeting expectations with the community and aligning that with the city, because what we don't want to happen, which, I mean, working with new funding in the city can be a challenge. It doesn't, especially because we're new, it's always timely. And so the nightmare scenario is that we have this timeline and we're telling orgs that they're going to get funds by a certain date, and then it's way late, which is a real possibility. So I agree with you, John. Like I agree with what you're saying, but I also know, working with the city, that we really have to be careful about managing expectations.
And let me just say really quick, we work with a lot, I mean, in the community, I work with a lot of people that are over-promised and underserved. We don't want to do that right off the bat.
Executive Director.
Yeah, I just want to make it clear. I will support whatever you guys come up with, right? I'm just trying to give realistic expectations as a government administrator that works for you, right? Because there will be things you ask of me that I don't want. I want you to be clear that there are some things I can't expedite, even if it's your greatest dreams, because we work in a city that we work in. So we are government, even though we're independent, we still work under the function of government, right? And government isn't fast and it's not efficient in any conversations I've ever been part of with government. So to the point of overcommitting, and Dr. Adams, I hear you. We know there are a lot of outstanding boards that need this money, and I'm on the same page with you. I want to get it out fast. I want you guys to be successful in this program. It is great, but you only get your first shot is your first impression, and that's why I feel it's so important to just take some time and do it right the first time, and then when we get really good at it, we'll get faster and more efficient, and we'll get more words. There's just a lot to be considered here, but the need is great, and there is timeliness to it, and so I just want to make that clear that the process is yours to create. I'm not trying to influence that. I'm just trying to the parameters and how you do it and who you give it to. That's all on you guys. Right? But process is something that I have a part in, and I can't overpromise you the process part. Right? So that's why I'm trying to give you realistic expectations of what the process might be. Right? So that's the thing. You guys dream it up, and I tell you, well, here's what the process actually can do from a realistic standpoint, right? But we're in agreement. There's great need, and this is going to do great good. And I think you guys have all of the power over how you get that out to the boards, who you pick, and you're going to make an impact. I really feel that.
Commissioner Pete.
I had a question.
Commissioner.
What is the penalty if we do not spend all of this grant money in this fiscal cycle?
So there was an interesting question that came up today at council budget hearings. Somebody asked, I think it was Councilman Slight, said, well, what happened to the grant money last year? And that's a great outstanding question because the law says it has to go towards the grants. There is a process for moving things back to the general fund. I had requested that the grant money be held so that you guys could use it again this year. I was told, no, it can't be done. So we did lose some money, but apparently, according to the finance director, to your point, if we don't use it, they're going to put it back in the general fund. Now, I'm not a lawyer, so I don't know if that's appropriate or inappropriate, and I don't have a legal ruling from the city, just what the finance director said, that can even be done, because it was appropriated under 115 for only one purpose. And there isn't a provision in 115 that says if it's not used, it goes back to the general fund. So that's the confusing part that we need to get a clarification from the law director why we can't roll that money over, why we don't have access to last year's money, and what happened. So
why don't you go ahead?
It's a follow up. That feels like exactly what we determined. That feels like a conflict of interest right there, because the law director's job, he works for the city, and I know that we have this situation where we get representation, but I would want an outside counsel to look at everything and then tell us if it should go back to the general fund or if it gets rolled over. So I just wanted to put that out there that I would not feel comfortable that in that situation that we would rely on the city's law director. I think this is like when we were listening in when you were at the meeting and we were listening in on the part where they were talking about the lawyer. And it's kind of similar to the discussion that we had, but I do think that as these discussions are being flushed out, it's becoming clearer that we are going to need some independent counsel if they're just giving us, suggestions and guidance, feedback, and not representing us, but I think we're going to need an outside person to decide that for us, because if we don't, we're just going to take the advice of the law director and they're going to act in the best interest of the city.
Right, not just the lawyer, but in this case. So I hear that, and then I think everyone's generally in agreement about that. I just wanted to touch upon something you said. I understand, there's a lot of organizations that are actively doing a lot of stuff. May I recommend, though, maybe in item C, there is a portion of the grants that maybe it's flexible for not just small organizations or startups, but even individuals that may have ideas. There's like the Cleveland Foundation has that you can get your first grant be like $5,000, and then they would help you. And then to that effect, I think there's management capability with some of these foundations that may be able to support us in some ways. I don't know if that's a solution to the excess funds that could be held. I don't know. I'm not a lawyer, not an accountant. If it could be held in some type of escrow for an overflow, right? We need to figure that out. That would be good.
So I don't know. They never gave me a reason why they couldn't hold the money. They just said it couldn't be done. So it's. I guess what I'm trying to suggest is someone can ask that question if you want to ask it again, or you can find out very specifically what their opinion is. And then to your point, Adams, if we feel that opinion is a conflict, then we have the ability to reach out to another attorney for a different rate.
Commissioner Ferguson.
A couple of things. One, if with the assumption that we don't get this money back, if we do one cycle of grants, I just would hope we make our best effort to spend all the money. And secondly, I think it would also be important for us to start having a conversation, I think that's getting moved into around eligibility and guidelines, because some of the things I know we're very benevolent and we want to do and give a lot of money away, but I also want to make sure we're not, our heart isn't getting far ahead and we're putting ourselves in a position that we're going to be giving people money that is going to get us in a situation where we're going to be sued, where we are not going to be fiscally responsible because we are still a government entity. So when we talk about just giving money away to individuals or giving money away to maybe organizations who might not have a 501c3 and different things, but watching a hearing, that was something that came up. Wanting to make sure we're not giving money to a political organization or just an LLC. Like, I really think the Charter 115 has outlined 3 great categories as the 4 for us, but I would love us to start moving into having a conversation about eligibility, about criteria and those things. Because while I love the idea of giving many grants to individuals, and I believe in paying people, I was an organizer, I still organize with different organizations, I'm also on the streets. I don't want us, as the first time, this commission having this much power to get in trouble because we was giving money to people. And I also just want to reiterate, right now, currently, we are in a process. We are planning an event with people for the next 6 months that we are going to different community organizations and we're asking for money. And so we're also in a situation that these grants are going to be rolled out during the same time that we are also getting money from community organizations, while we also are having a fiscal sponsor of community organizations. Because we're going to the outings where we're going to all these other people, and we're saying, give us money for this program, and then we're also going to be giving out money, and there can be some conflict of interest. So I just want us to move into having real conversations about criteria eligibility, because I just don't want us to get in trouble. Because I think that's a very good way that people will try to discredit us is through that.
Okay, so I know there's a few more. I know Commissioner P and Commissioner Wong. And I guess we can see if we want to pursue and vote this up, vote this down. Are we okay just reviewing it and giving it a thought? Maybe moving forward, thinking of guidelines. But first,
Actually, I would like to make a motion that we actually vote on this schedule, like the deadlines. With the understanding that then we're going to really dig into like the eligibility criteria. So I would make that motion that we approve this set of dates as written here. And
I would say if you could add flexibility, because there is a lot of things we still don't know. So I think it's in good faith effort that we will meet these deadlines, but we still have some logistics from that budget meeting that we really cannot say as.
sure.
I do not think we should vote up or down on this.
So
we just said
Okay.
we made a motion, which
Yeah.
So is there a second? If there's a second,
Then it dies.
then it dies. But either we have a second or we don't, and that's fine. If you all don't agree with me, I'm totally fine with that.
Do we have a second?
To go up or down for what?
To make a motion.
So the question is on the adoption to approve the timeline with flexibility based on the information we receive from the city. Is there a second?
I don't know how to say, but it has to be. This is not like for agreeing this from. I would prefer that it's written that we edit this document to reflect that. So
Do we have a second?
So no, I guess.
Okay, so the motion dies.
I make an amendment. Can we just
Make
edit?
the motion.
I'd like to make the motion that we actively edit our desires and intentions into this document right now, so we have a clear and consistent memory of what occurred here. You know, so if you want to provide, I mean, I think, so I think, yeah, before we get to all the community organizations, if we can get the timeline done, are we still okay with can we maybe repeat what we want, right? From this, your desire for this is to be.
but you just put a motion on the table, so we have to either second it or let it die before we can have.
So I made a motion to actively edit this document to a point that reflects our intentions.
I second that motion.
So the question is on the adoption of editing the document to reflect our intentions. Any discussion?
So,
Commissioner Pete?
to the chair, so discussion would be then to really clearly write out what we're approving. So I mean, what I'm hearing,
Yeah, so it's a question about the motion. Is there any question about the motion? Oh, we have a second. Any debate? Hence none. We're gonna call a vote to, the question is on the adoption of editing the document to reflect our intentions. A roll call will be conducted. Commissioner Zaid?
Aye.
Commissioner Adams?
Aye.
Commissioner Wang? Commissioner
aye.
Commissioner Harry Ferguson? Commissioner A. Kennedy? Motion carried. So I guess, I will ask you, like, would you like to discuss briefly guidelines? I don't think all these items will be completed today, but if we would like this discussion, I guess to begin, I'm open to that.
I think this year, I think that the dates are, we don't know, but I think to reflect, perhaps if we go around and make additions, and then we can continue. John seems to have the most additions, if we can. Jason, you have.
I just want to make a point to the chair, Miro, since you have 7 people voting tonight. So be very careful that, because if you vote 7 yes, you actually carried something with the voice of the whole commission. So, okay, good. So, good point. I didn't catch that. Sorry, it's been a long day. I just wanted to make sure because it was on my phone. Oh, no.
We just have to make sure that we don't vote on this, because then it doesn't go back.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think we're just doing some general discussion. I think in general that we would like to take some time to reflect and provide more in depth. I think we can start the conversation, since we have, until possibly 8 o'clock, and we really don't have a lot of items on old business and new business. So please, if you feel so comfortable that we can kind of extend this portion of the conversation, because it's supposed to be allotted till 7:30, 7:14.
Can I ask Jason, so I saw at the end of the timeline here, a contract created and signed by October 31st this year. So I'd assume that the contract would need to be signed in order for the check to be processed and mailed. So my question to you is, if things are starting to shut down in October, that worries me a little bit, because the most important part is checks going. So I just want to ask how your feelings on that.
Yeah. So if contracts are in the process of being signed, we can appropriate the funds. But to be on the safe side, we can take that back to October 1st and push it
That would make me sleep
little
better.
bit. Yeah.
You can make the
Do we have a date?
changes, yeah, like the. How do you want to do that?
Should we write out a big thing?
No, no.
You want to make it cheap?
Oh, I don't feel like.
I don't know, it might be easier to.
Do you write?
Yeah.
We don't have a.
Okay.
I'm keeping. If you want to give me a few minutes, I can send it back. I'm taking notes, so I can be happy to be the.
Mhm.
So,
Thank you.
So right now we're creating contracts created by October 1st instead of the 31st.
So we work back.
Work backwards.
Yeah.
So then the next one is August 31st. It said. Applications are reviewed. Do you want to do this?
So I would even start programs may repeat for multiple years, discretion of commission.
Yeah. So
I guess what I'm looking at is
Yeah, but we're just.
So I will say that we're not going to complete the document today, and I think that's okay. I think this is general discussion, so I am aware that the rules committee will like to present this next Wednesday, at the next committee.
No, but we don't know if you guys are going to, we're trying to expedite things, but I don't know when we're planning to, because this seems to me the most changeable part of it, you know, so.
And just a point, the rules committee doesn't have to set the board until you're done with it. So the rules can be taken in pieces, so they can wait for your work to be done to review it, or they could just agree. They could even do a motion that says whatever you come up with will be what we endorse.
Thank you for that clarification. Commissioner Adams, I know that you had something you wanted to say. Would you like to bring that forth?
I just, feel like if we get the timeline that is suggested, if we develop the criteria and these things by April 30th, and the idea is that, and I know April 30th may not be the actual, I don't know if that's the actual date, because I don't know if this was created before we came up with our regular meeting times, but do we need 2 weeks in between when we approve it and when the application is open?
Yeah, because the staff needs time to, well, just like create a portal or create like the mechanism to apply.
But if we know now, why can't they start on it now? Like I'm
Because
saying,
I think it's up to us. We have to.
What I'm saying, we don't have to issue these things. We're looking at a timeline.
Yeah.
I feel like we could be proactive in creating a portal to happen. So why do we have to wait until we actually approve it to start creating?
So I think that's the purpose of our meetings, to start thinking of guidelines. So my expectation, I would say, is not to have this meeting that we have all our guidelines set for. That is unrealistic. We can start thinking and drafting up our ideas, but my expectation, maybe as a committee, maybe we just take the first two, right, and start thinking on an individual and bring our thoughts and ideas back to the committee, and then we can start based on our consensus. Okay, this is what we agree upon, and this is how we want our guidelines to be.
I think all I'm suggesting is I think that there are spaces in the suggested timeline that we can get back. That's all I'm saying. I think it's a useful discussion, like Kate just made me aware that the portal has to be created, right? So then we think about how do we get the portal going, right? So I'm just
Or like whatever the mechanism is.
Yeah,
I don't use portal.
I'm saying, we have this recommendation, but because I think we all do recognize that it is tight, where do we kind of move deadline things around in a way that is more productive? That's all I'm trying to figure out.
So I think I'm gonna take Commissioner Wong, and then we can go to.
So may I suggest, I do believe the Cleveland Foundation has probably, or any of those foundations has probably help for, we need to learn this process too, how to make these things, if we can get some guidance. I know that if you donate, money to manage the grant making and all the things, maybe we can get some advice there. I don't know, does anybody have any ideas?
I would be open to possibly just to have a speaker. So I'm open to that. But I just wanted to understand that, that I really like the idea of bringing different ideas and innovation. So I really like that suggestion. And I think it will help frame our work. Commissioner Ferguson.
Because all the thing that we're talking about is timeline, but we were talking about that in juxtaposition of bringing in outside organizations and things, and nobody is also mentioning is a conflict of interest right now. We are still actively pursuing money for foundations. So I will go on the record and say I do not feel comfortable bringing in organizations like the Cleveland Foundation to help us come up with a grant process where we're begging them for money for an event that's in 2 to 3 weeks. Like, it's not okay, it's unethical. And for us to have just sat through a meeting yesterday about ethics and then we're still throwing out unethical ideas right now just because we want to keep the process moving. I don't think that's a good show of faith in the community. I think that's wrong. And that's what we're
Hold on. So I understand. So I think it's very important that we do meeting etiquette as well. I think all comments are welcome. I want to ensure that all comments are directed to the chair. Um, as
Can I just make a point? A lot of city departments do both simultaneously. They both pursue grants and deliver grants. So it's not unusual to do both at the same time. I would suggest that if there are specific questions about ethics, to send those, and we'll send that to the law department. That's basically what they said in the presentation. If you have a concern about something being ethical, let's have a conversation, right? So that's if there's a concern about the ethics of what we're doing, then let's put that in writing and send it to the law department, to Delonte, and get a ruling on it.
And I think we brought directed to the chair is the fact that I was already shut down several times by Terry, but I keep saying we need to talk about guidelines. Everyone keeps saying, no, let's just talk about timelines. But while we're talking about timelines, that has been what, the second or third time that it has been brought up to bring in an outside organization while we are simultaneously pursuing grant funding. I understand that is what other government agencies are doing. That's fine. My issue is the lack of transparency, the lack of ability to have that robust conversation. And we're just gonna, let's not talk about that. Let's just move the timeline. Let's talk about rules. We're not gonna talk about how we're also bringing up ideas that are presenting ethical violations and how some commissioners might not feel comfortable. I don't feel comfortable engaging in conversations in which you can clearly see it's a conflict of interest, there is an ethical violation, and then being shut down because what happens 2 to 3 weeks from now, and we can wait and send an email, and then we get flagged after the email's already been sent. Hey, you know what? Actually, that whole conversation you had 2 weeks ago was wrong. Because in this moment right now, we just want to move past the timeline and get other people's thoughts out there and have unethical conversations. I just don't think that's the right thing to do. And that is not good if we want to continue with community trust.
So I will just note that I think it's important that we do our due diligence. So I think I will bring your concern forward and just make sure that we're in compliance. I'm not saying we are or we're not, but I think it's important that I hear all committee members, I would say, as well as ensuring that whoever, if we do decide to go that route, that we are in agreement with, right? So I don't think it's appropriate as chair to say, yes, let's do this, right? Before anybody is brought forth, there should be a formal motion as well as just a consensus on why why the intention, what we hope to get out of this, to ensure that it is productive for the committee as well as for any idea, any proposal, any business item brought forth. Okay, and Commissioner Wong, please direct all comments to the chair and ensure that it is constructive in nature. We all want to move this business forward. I think we just have different ideas and perspectives on how to go about that. But
I do have to comment that I do not appreciate, I was not shutting you down. To the chair, I was not shutting Commissioner Hurst down. My response was merely to make sure that concerns expressed by other commissioners about how we can get these grants dispersed, how we can reach the widest audience. That was my only reason for suggesting an entity like the Cleveland Foundation. I do not think inherently, and again, I'm not a lawyer, but from what I heard yesterday, that is an inherent conflict of interest. And if there is a conflict of interest, we have to let a lawyer help us through that. And and the reason why I think we want to focus on the timeline is that it provides the framework with which we can do the guideline, the number of programs, the number of grants. All of that is dependent on time. All that is dependent on how quickly we can get these mechanisms in portals, and it doesn't have to be complicated because we could do. I'm sure they did grants when there weren't computers, so I'm sure we can handle this. But it still takes time to draft all those documents. So this is not in like, and I really do not, think it's productive to be constantly, I think, so worried about like appearances of ethics and not actually trying to get forward with this work. I don't think, I mean, I'm not an attorney here, but like, I don't think it is unethical to ask, is there an organization in the community that can support us in this? And
So I would say that as a chair, I think it's important that I take all perspectives into account. I cannot say if it's ethical or not. What I will do, because this concern was brought, was bring it forward. And I feel that I appreciate everyone's compassion and our diligence in ensuring that we move this work forward. I think we all can agree that we want the best for the community, right? That we may see it differently, but regardless of that, it is my hope that after this meeting, that even if we are not if we're in disagreement, that we still are able to function as a unit. And that's why I wanted to bring up the communication. We all have different ways of communicating. We have all different perspectives and life experiences. It is the expectation of the chair, and I would say the co-chair, that we still move the business forward and that we do it in a respectful manner.
this is what I want to say, and I'm going to say it very openly. I do not feel that was a respectful comment to me. I do not think it was accurate, and
So I'm gonna bring this forward.
This is a way, and I would appreciate the chair not limiting conversation when it's not done, because I think that is not the role of the chair. But this is not being addressed here.
So I believe that
I'm not done.
there are certain items that's on the agenda. It's not that I'm shutting you down. I think there is a appropriate time where maybe we can have these commissioners talk maybe offline. I think it's important that we move our business forward and we're not allowing certain I think it's important that we move the business forward. I think it's very important that we follow Robert rules of order, and that helps to create unity and cohesion. We're moving the business forward.
Okay.
Commissioner
As co-chair, which everyone seems to forget of this committee, I think that we cannot get to unity if people don't feel like they're right. I understand that as a goal, but people can't say that everyone's voice is going to be heard and then not hear everyone's full voice. And, if the chair of a committee feels that everyone's being heard, that matters less than the committee members how they feel about that. So I just would love to authentically actually let everybody finish, because we do have different ideas. I do not think that anyone is trying to actually attack each other, but if we don't let people fully finish, maybe they didn't get to their full thought and they're partially through, and then someone else comes. I just want to make sure, and if you're absolutely correct, we need to move the business forward. But I'm going to go back to our conversation earlier this week and where you started this meeting. Part of what you want to accomplish this meeting is us getting to know each other better. And I want to make sure that as we are conducting this meeting, that whatever we do is going to help accomplish that goal. Because I think that goal that you had is a good goal, it's an appropriate goal, but then we have to practice actually doing those things so that people walk away feeling like that whatever they wanted to say, they got to say.
Yeah. So to the chair, I mean, this is a difficult conversation. I really do support you. I feel like we could. I mean, I felt the respect to feeling heard. I think the hand is to move this to the point where we can either, if we don't finish today, we finish next time, but we need to move forward. We have limited time. We have 29 minutes. I would support your efforts to keep us, point of order to keep moving the conversation that we need to have.
Co-chair Rodriguez, I just want to let you know that I agree with your suggestion earlier that we use this as a time of discussion, get things out there, but also review these things, like maybe just review this today, and then maybe each week address 2 things at a time. We'll go separately, look at them, come together, discuss like maybe the first 2 things, guidelines, and go for the program, get that done. The next week, do the next week, do that. I just want you to know that I support that suggestion.
Thank you. So I will say, my goal is not to silence any voice. So I would even be open to maybe say 5 minutes if we really want to continue this conversation. Or, it is a unit, and we move in units, right? So I did hear some voices say that, they want to continue the conversation. However, it cannot be, with all due respect, back and forth. Because that's what it sounds like to me as a chair, what I'm hearing. And I will be mindful to remove any names, and all comments are always to the chair.
Sure, and that is my concern, is that there is no, and also we can't move forward if there is not a sense of harmony or equality here. And my intentions were expressed not by me. Now everybody seems to be in agreement that we need to portion this up, and that was my intention, was to at least have the timeline set framework for us to speak about this. I am concerned that in the effort of maybe not moving forward, or not just moving forward, but quelling conflict, that we're creating more problems about unity in the future. This is, so perhaps it's a suggestion next time, if you can give us a more clear agenda or a pathway forward, instead of just saying, do we have like all these things to discuss, if we can move forward in an order section. Because what I observed was that everybody was listening, but maybe not recognizing that other people are saying something and jumping around. And it's hard. Some of us want us to reach a consensus, and that's what I was observing. But I do think there has to be some points of orders about what can be said in this meeting, and accusations that are made. It's not the first time that this has happened to me. So I would appreciate more of concern about that.
So to your comment, I have always stated that everything is to go to the chair. I have always stated that there should be no names. I also stated that, to your point, that I felt that our goal was not to vote on everything, to get this idea, see, to let it resonate, as well as taking some time, maybe for A and B, C and D in the next coming weeks. And I know that there was a topic of urgency from the rules and procedures. So I attempt to clarify, to ensure that it is important that we do our due diligence, and that we are ensuring that all our perspectives are heard and we're not rushing, right? Because if we feel like we're rushing, I feel that, mistakes, errors happen. I appreciate this dialogue. I feel like this allows us to be on, as well as begin to understand how we respond to different conversations. So with that said, Commissioner Adams.
I would just like to say I think that what I'm hearing is we're not really disagreeing on the importance of these items. We're not disagreeing on the importance of the timeline and tightening it up. I think what I'm hearing is that different commissioners feel like different items should be top priority, right? That's what I'm hearing. Because I feel like Terry believes that the timeline is more important. Like Alana really, well, that's what I'm hearing. So I understand. I can see her shaking her head. I have eyes. So what I would like to suggest is, because I really like Sharina's suggestion. I think that your point is well taken. and then we can tighten up the structure for the meeting to make it a little bit clearer about like what we're going to accomplish and where we're going to head. I would like to propose, and I know that we're still in this motion to discuss, so that we would have to move out of the discussion eventually and then move into a different motion. But as the co-chairs, considering everything that has been said for the next meeting, what we and we can always have conversations with different commissioners between now and the next meeting. We could work together to come up with a timeline that we could suggest and propose to the full budget committee at the next meeting. But we could also, in this meeting, select those two items that Sharina proposed. And if we, uh, I would suggest guidelines and eligibility, because I do agree with Alana as well that that's something that is going to have to be clarified, and that might, those I would take a little bit longer than maybe some of the other ones. So just to get the ball rolling on those, and then maybe we just move on with two items until we get through them. I would just propose. I think there's a lot of good suggestions that are going around, and to this point, it is important that we just don't meet and then we walk away and we have some discussion. They were a little heated and we just didn't do anything. So I do also think that it's also important that when we have these meetings, that we do have something that we've accomplished from the meetings that will also push the work of the committee.
Would you like to put a motion on the floor?
I think we're still in the discussion. So
Oh, I didn't know. Commissioner Ferguson?
So my issue is not if you're not talking about guidelines. I'm fine if we're going to talk about the calendar and what is that done today. I don't have an issue with that. My only concern is that we say one thing and we do another. So we said we're going to talk about the timeline, and in the process of us talking about the timeline, we started throwing out other nonprofit organizations that we want to be involved in money making and decision making process. We're on a public record, we're in a very public meeting. And so my concern is the implications of propriety. It is not about just the measure of being seen as unethical. It is actually having some very clear parameters around. If we say we're going to talk about timeline. I do not think it's appropriate to throw out other organizations, especially when we are still trying to figure out, it seems, around the ethics and asking questions, because we don't know what that put us under. We don't know what that means moving forward. Also, this is also because I know a few other people in this room have had other conversations with the staff. So also maybe because I'm also aware that we are in the middle of planning a large event. Yes, other government agencies do things simultaneously, but we have all talked about that we are a new commission. We've only been installed a month. There hasn't been a full scope spectrum of transparency where all commissioners know that we are in the middle of a community project right now that involves several community agencies. And so when we are at a budget subcommittee and we just want to throw out a name, I do have a lot of concerns about that, especially since I thought we were talking about timeline.
So can I respond to you? So there was a motion brought forth by Pete, I believe, to try to adopt this timeline. Because I remember talking about flexibility, but it was not seconded. So that died. So that means we can't move forward with even accepting because no other commissioner seconded. So it didn't seem. It didn't seem like there was agreement on the timeline, right? Because I even said with flexibility, depending on the city's procedures that we don't know yet. So we even tried to bring that. So it's not that we weren't talking about it. It was that because it wasn't brought forth, that motion, it seemed like it really wasn't the commission, the committee right here were not interested in this, and even more moving forward, it turned into something else. So it's not that we didn't do it, that we didn't talk about it. That issue wasn't voted up. Okay, Commissioner Wong.
Sure. I mean, again, the reason why I mentioned even the possibility of advice from the Cleveland Foundation was to directly address the issues that we would have in getting out the grants by April 30th. I know in no way talks about their grant making capabilities, money decision making. It was just simply for a structural advice. So again, I don't know what you can do to make us listen to each other a little bit better. But
So,
that is what, and I thought that that was a relevant point because we still have to, the timeline is dependent on whether we have the resources with which to fulfill the grant making process. And that I felt was what we were doing, is that we need to edit this portion in a way that gives us flexibility, and also to fulfill the material needs of the grant making.
okay. So I would say, to answer your question, I think based on these conversations, I think we may want to follow up with an email, or conversation, to ensure that we're doing our due diligence. I have no concern, but I mean that is going forward, so I think it's important as the chair that I acknowledge that, and that if we do bring someone in, I would say honestly that I will be a little apprehensive based on this meeting. Um, there's a lot of dialogue and conversation that I would not want an outsider to be a part of at this moment. So I think it's a great idea. It is our hope that maybe the next meeting we can vote on it, maybe based on the information that is, we have no conflicts of interest, so that we can move it forward. Um, and maybe by the next meeting, so two action items is maybe to establish some grant meeting order. I think that's one thing, meeting order, as well as that follow up for conflict of interest, just to ensure. And then think of speakers, and if we would like to make a motion, somebody on the next items that we may see that we would like to just start on. I do not expect us to have everything fleshed out. I would say, as a chair, that as we progress forward, it is imperative that we vocalize our points, right? I think everybody's opinion is valued, and if there's some conversations that we need to have off the side, I would say this year, I'm still learning. I'm no expert. I'm not perfect, and neither of us are. I will also know that we are all individuals and we have different personalities, right? And sometimes there may be tension, right? And I think that's okay. But we should not disrespect each other. We should not put each other's opinions down. We should not name call. And to that extent, I don't know what else to say. But if you would like to make a motion to bring business forward for some items that we should review, I do like the idea of guidelines and exploring eligibility.
I was under the impression that we had taken a vote to move forward on talking about the timeline. Not that we were necessarily going to finish that one tonight, but that's what we started with October 1st. And I think we obviously did get off track, but I don't know if we have in the next 15 minutes to do more on that, or if we just need to work on that in a
I
future
would
meeting
say
or in
a
between meetings.
future meeting, because I would like, of course, with the permission, I think this is a great time to sit back and select our meeting time. You wanted to?
I would like to offer an amendment to the motion to set the timeline to table it to the next meeting, just so we can complete what we started.
Is there a second?
Second.
The question is on the adoption of amending the motion to, the motion per, I'm sorry, amending the motion about the timeline to table it to the next meeting. Any discussion?
Clarification on as to when the next meeting will be.
Yeah, we have to set that.
Yeah, so we know, because further, my concern is that further we push back the discussion, the further we push back.
We're gonna set the next meeting after we pass this motion.
I would also like to remind us that Jason also reminded us that the rules committee does not have to approve everything in one big chunk. So if that means that the rules committee has to maybe wait a couple weeks for this portion, it does not prevent the rules committee from moving forward on this other work. I would also say that I made the motion because I do think that if we I don't want a scenario where we're accepting what the rules committee is telling us about budget and grants committee. And I just feel like it's important that we send our recommendations for how this is handled to the rules committee, rather than the rules committee telling us how we are going to handle budgets and grants. So that is why I made the motion.
Any further questions? Commissioner
Again,
Wong?
I'm to share, I'm a little bit stunned as to the constant binaries and mischaracterizations. We have, ideally the rules committee, for which I'm the chair, would have met at the beginning for this. My concern is not about, we understand that portion can be passed, but there is another problem is that the further this is delayed, the further this timeline moves back in time in getting initiated. I thought that we had all voiced our concern that we want to outreach to the community and spread these grants out, the abilities, the opportunities as soon as possible. This is why I inquired as to when the next meeting of this committee will be, because to me, this seems like a fairly, it's not easy, but a fairly simple task that we need to accomplish that really determines our success as a committee in dispersing these grants in an equitable manner. So I guess.
So we will discuss that after this motion. So is there any other question or debate?
I'd just like to know theoretically when we are meeting next.
We will discuss that if we're able to move this vote up or down. That is the next business item. Right, so we have a motion, so the question, the answer is that because we have a motion on the floor, I can't place a date because we have a formal motion, so only that motion can be addressed, if that makes sense.
I thought that was part of the discussion because that would maybe factor into people's voting and decision making.
So any further debate or question? Okay. The question is on the adoption of accepting this timeline with we're tabling it to the next meeting. All those in favor, we're gonna do a roll call. Commissioner Said. Commissioner Adams.
Aye.
Commissioner Wang. Wrong. No. Commissioner Pete. Commissioner Ferguson.
Aye.
Commissioner Kennedy. Aye. Motion carried. Thank you so much for tabling the discussion. The next item of business is to explore our meeting, finalization of our meeting. Please review your phone to see what is a good day and time for your schedule.
So do we meet every other week or every other week?
For the first and third.
I'll just ask that can it not be a Thursday?
Okay, that's fine. But Chair, I would also like to just reiterate that one of the things that is suggested but hasn't been put into motion is that we will work individually and together as co-chairs, and we will communicate with all the members of the committee to come with a suggested timeline for the next meeting. So we're not ignoring the importance of the timeline, but over the course of the next couple of weeks, we will be in dialogue and discussions with each other. And after talking to everyone, we should be able to come up with a timeline with everyone's input that maybe we can just push forward and vote up or down in the next meeting. I just want to Terry's concern. I just want to say that I think there's a plan in place to honor what your concern is.
To the chair, let me just go over the CPC calendar for next week so you know what is eligible. Monday is a city holiday, so offices are closed. On Tuesday, the CPC Rules Committee is from 5 to 7. On Wednesday, we have our full committee meeting from 6 to 8:30. On Thursday, it's currently open, and Friday, we are currently open.
What about the following week?
Next week or the following?
The following week, we do not have any committees on the calendar.
Could we do the Wednesday first? Is that the first? No, it's 2 weeks from.
We did have a meeting on the first, didn't we?
No, it's just
No.
22nd.
next week.
But then yesterday in training, we said we set a meeting date
Let's
first.
look at our.
We set a meeting date
Oh, we're training.
after everybody was dismissed.
The training.
Or do we
You
say
might
we're
be
gonna
right,
do
but
it?
I didn't put it on the calendar for the first.
Did you?
We may have, I'll have to go back and review the video.
I remember yesterday we said that because we tabled, we adjourned like right after. But yeah, because I was a chair that meeting.
Okay.
We Wednesday, March 1st, from 6 to 8 straight.
So I did not add it to the calendar. I apologize. It was late. It's a long day. So it looks like Wednesday, March 1st is off the table, but you do have,
What about the 27th of February? Monday, because I have one.
so Monday and Tuesday are open of that week.
Tuesday, I cannot do. No,
That takes us back to Thursday, which was objective.
What about Friday? Is that off the table?
It's not my preference, but.
I feel like forever.
No, just.
Oh, just for that meeting?
Yeah, just right.
And then maybe after that, like, I mean, maybe before that time, we could try to just look for the month before everybody else gets their meeting. Try to get this in.
Commissioner Rodriguez, remember, like you did before, when you had like what to do for like a month? Yeah, before, or someone did that. If we can like maybe send a do-what poll out for maybe like a month or 6 weeks.
I should just set a regular vote.
Yeah, I mean, that was, I don't know if we're able to have a consensus today. It don't seem like.
I'm just throwing out a suggestion that maybe.
I
we could
agree
help
that
us.
would be ideal, but.
So, you know,
So I guess,
Sure, if you'd like to put a doodle out, we could get that out just at regular meeting times, and schedule it as far in advance as you'd like.
I don't know, it's nice, I think that's good.
We should try it.
I think it's what we have to do. If we could just do that.
But I mean, to the next, we have to say this next meeting.
Yeah, yeah.
Just make a motion. So I guess we just done
The third?
Friday.
What time, can we do it at 4?
We do a little early.
Yeah, I can.
You can.
I work.
What time
Five?
do you
I can do 6. I work.
do? 6, okay.
so 6 to 8.
I can only do 6 to 8. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, guys.
And if you all are, I'm on vacation, Thursday, Friday, the weekend, but, feel free to carry on without me. I will definitely make sure you're staffed, for that meeting. It should be dependent on me being here, for you guys to carry your business. So I will put it on the calendar for the 3rd.
Okay. Can I have one more motion?
Commissioner Ferguson.
That between now and the next meeting, we get some clarity around organization, but like we get clarity, and I think the problem is maybe because we don't. Everybody, I realize, might not know of the current projects that the commission staff is working on. So I would just like to make a motion to find out what the current projects are in terms of.
So we won't be in conflict, is that what
So
you're saying?
yes, because
Okay.
I don't want to be in conflict, and I think it's very hard right now because we don't know, and it's only because some of us are having certain conversations with staff. But I think moving forward, as we're talking about grants and stuff, we need to know right now who are we tied to for the next 6 months on a fiscal basis, who are we going after for grants, so that when we're having these, we can ask the law department the right questions, and that way when we're here meeting, we already all walk into this room knowing the organization that we're already have something to present. I think that really needs to happen. And
So,
just-
I mean, I can't do that, so that would be,
For a point of clarification, I could tell you what projects we're working on, but are you asking what organizations we work with? Because that's.
I'm asking for fiscal. Because I had a conversation with one of the staff members last week, and we had a conversation around like the large event, which is an amazing event, who the fiscal agent was for that event right now. And then there were certain organizations that are going to pursue for funding, and some have already been confirmed. I just want us to know that part, like who are the people who are going to be asking for money and who have already been confirmed, so that we can clarify with the law department around when we're doing this process and we start talking guidelines and everything else. We know what the situation is.
And just to sum up the situation, we're part of a committee that's doing that project, so we are not the fiscal agent for that. So it's a little bit different than what you're describing. We're helping to fundraise, but we are not handling the money. We're not the recipients of the money. So we are just part of a project that is much larger than us. We are one component of that project. So it is not our project. So that is a mischaracterization of that project. Was it born from one of the brains of our wonderful employees? Yes. She shot the idea, built a coalition around it, but there's a committee. We are not the fiscal agent of that project. So I understand the concern about ethics. I don't see yet in my mind a clear picture of what exactly the conflict that we're trying to discuss here. So that's going to require a little more fleshing out of to why do we see a conflict here, particularly with an organization that was mentioned that, as far as I know, has nothing to do with what we're working on here. So it may have been that committee did ask Cleveland Foundation for some assistance, but it's in Charter 115 that we are allowed to pursue money for ourselves. We're not doing that in this instance. We're not pursuing money for the CPC with this project. We are helping contribute to a committee that is raising money for a specific project. So a little bit different than us asking for money and then maybe giving that money to an organization. But even if we were to ask an organization like the Cleveland Foundation for money, it doesn't mean that we can't do business with that organization in other aspects. It just has to make sure that it's clean in the way we do it. So it's not that simple that everyone we have money contact with, we can't have come give a conversation. So the suggestion of if we wanted to say, hey, there's an organization that does grants all the time and we want some feedback from them, if the feedback is free, there's no conflict there. I mean, we could ask advice for people who do grants all the time on how they do it, and that wouldn't be a conflict in my mind. But we could get clarification on that if we needed to do so.
So Commissioner Pete had a question before. So and then we're gonna have to start wrapping this
I
up.
just think it's really important because we're being recorded, and I just want something on the record. So that's all.
Then, yeah, you made it clear. We got you on the record. So that's why I said, as a chair, I heard your concern, and I will follow up. And just because it was brought forth, I just feel like I have to do my due diligence. But Commissioner Pete.
Yeah, I guess at different points, but moving on, I think whoever's working on some of these issues should be in touch with staff as we kind of develop proposals to make sure that that there is alignment with the capacities and whatever the staff has. The other thing, and it's unrelated, but my understanding is that sometime in the next period of time, next month, when the rules committee, when we adopt certain rules, we will have to reduce the membership of this committee. So just something to keep in mind down the road, we're gonna have to figure out who's on this committee and who's on every committee. Because it sounds like the proposal might be that it's 3 to 5 members, and that's the current thing. But we'll have to keep that in mind as we go forward.
It's not even a proposal, it's like almost a necessity.
Yeah, because we can't have 7 people voting.
And 6 is very hard to get to. We're hoping this is a preview as a rules committee that will naturalistically hopefully migrate. But we will have to probably enforce that at some point in the fairest way possible.
So I feel like that's going to be the rules committee. Commissioner Adams.
All I would like to say is I think part of the tension is that different people have different information. There's a lack of transparency. I mean, I just heard about these events yesterday, and I feel like what could maybe help this go smoother is if we do get some clarification from Jason and the staff about what is happening. I really don't know what is happening with this event. I'm hearing things, but I don't know. So I sense that maybe some of us may not think that there are conflicts of interest, but I don't want to think there's no conflicts of interest. I want to know that there are no conflicts of interest. So I just, I'm not saying that I think there are. I'm not saying I think they're not, but I do think that part of our job is diligence. And I do not think that, I just think we should double check everything. That's all I'm saying. So I just think if we could just get everybody on the same page with the same information, then we can have a discussion based on the same information. But I feel like there's different things that people know because some people are talking to staff and some people are not, and some people are talking to each other and some people are not. So I just think that just getting all the information out to everybody in the same manner would be helpful to have a more fruitful and productive discussion.
Thank you so much. I think that is a good point to end for the meeting. Thank you. Thank you so much for all the fruitful discussion. We have our action items that we have forth. I will move to adjourn the meeting with unanimous consent. Thank you so much and have a great night.
Thank you. Said if we are allowing for lies to be on record. I think we really need a lawyer after this because we just allowed for a lie to be on record. And I know I'm saying that with the cameras on because we just allowed for a lie to be on record. No, we did a lie for a while because you wanted to adjourn.